Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the continuation of Little Acts of Kindness. This will be Part 76, Chapter 76, entitled Grandpa Shimura's History Lesson. Izuku was at home, looking at his notebooks with his notes for his teammates. He had a rough idea of a plan, but he needed to figure out when each thing would happen. And he also had to account for the times, given some places like the power plant had to be held for a certain amount of time. Plus, he had to figure out what he would do for the video. A video to go along with the opening assassination could make a huge impact. It could be a good blow to the psyche of the hero team, but if the video wasn't done right, it could also turn them into a laughing stock. Could change the whole mood. He chewed on the tip of his pencil, making a few more notes. His thoughts drifted to what his mentor told him, about talking to others for advice. Who could he talk to? Aizawa was out since the man was always impartial in school stuff. Maybe Hound Dog. He would be talking with him tomorrow, and the hero would probably have good advice for him, or at least maybe a tip on how to do the video without stuttering. Who else could he talk to? His mind came up blank. He didn't really know many people, or at least know them well enough to ask advice. He could probably ask Nezu, but, well, Izuku was terrified about the lecture Nezu would end up giving, because Izuku was 70% sure the principal already had a few plans for world domination at the ready, if the mood ever struck him. Or maybe Izuku was being dramatic. Either way, Nezu would give him advice, but it would turn into a lecture that would probably change from the original topic into something else. Who else? A shout through the walls of the apartment startled him out of his thoughts, and Izuku could barely make out the muffled voice of Maboroshi shouting at Tenrei. A smile twitched up at his lips. His neighbor was someone Izuku was still getting used to. The man was nice, almost overly so, but it also never seemed like an act. Shaking his head, he returned to his notebook. Tapping his pencil, he glanced down at the notebook and the rule packet, which was flipped over to show the goals of the villain team. Then his eyes fell to goal number 7. 7. Kill Hero Commission Representative. He blinked at seeing it, and then remembering his grandfather was the CEO of the Hero Commission, which meant that he had to know how to be a good leader. Maybe he should ask his grandfather for advice. I think I should return home now, but if you need me, I've written my personal number on the back of the card. His grandfather's words echoed in his mind. Shifting items on his desk, he found the card his grandfather had given him and flipped it to see the number. He bit his lip, being indecisive. Should he really bother his grandfather over a school assignment? Would his grandfather even be willing to help him? Yaki had told him to ask other people for advice, and while it would be good to talk to Hound Dog, he wanted more than just a couple pieces of advice. Slowly, his fingers ghosted over the screen of his phone. Then, squeezing his eyes shut, he pressed the green button and held the phone up to his ear. It rang, once, twice, and on the third ring it picked up. Hello? Shimura Yuichi speaking. May I know who I'm speaking with? The man asked, sounding professional. Hey, Izuku greeted lamely. It's Izuku, he continued on. Izuku, his grandfather said in a cheerful tone. I'm so glad you decided to call. I hope you're doing okay. Yeah, Izuku said. That's good. To be honest, I'm glad you called. Work was getting a little tedious, his grandfather said, giving a small laugh. Izuku felt a small smile come onto his face. Anyways, I don't think you would call for no reason, so is there anything you want? Well... Izuku hesitated, and had to take a deep breath, and was glad his grandfather waited patiently. I wanted some advice. Oh? All right, I'll do my best to give you good advice. What's the topic? So you know how I'm a hero student, right? Izuku started, then felt stupid because of course his grandfather knew. Yes. Well, we're doing this training exercise called Civil War. It's a hero versus villain thing. Our 2 classes were split into teams, and a couple students were made into team leaders. Shinso was made leader of the hero team. Izuku paused, gathering his thoughts. I was made leader of the villain team. His grandfather gave a thoughtful hum at that, but said nothing while waiting for Izuku to continue. I think we have a decent plan, but I'm not sure if I'm cut out to be a leader. I don't know how to act. Then today they suggested we do a video, and that I do the speaking, but I'm not good at speaking. I stutter when I'm talking to other people. And I just I want to do well on this exercise, but even with a good plan, I don't know if we can do it. Our teams are so unbalanced. Izuku continued, ending up ranting a bit. He flushed and quickly apologized. Sorry. Why was there no better way to apologize? I want to be able to lead our team well. I understand, and it's perfectly all right for you to rant. Besides, it helped me get a grasp on the situation, I believe. Let me make sure I have everything right. His grandfather paused, and Izuku stayed quiet, waiting for the man to speak up. It's time for the first-year Civil War, and you were selected as the leader of the villain team. You were then chosen to be leader and are now worried about leading your team to victory. You also mentioned the teams were unbalanced and being unsure, which means that the hero team has more powerful people than you. Izuku gave a nod, then realized his grandfather couldn't see it. Yeah. All right. You mentioned having a plan that you think will work, but are unsure it will. Do you have a reason you don't believe it'll work? Our team, my classmates are confident in me, but the students from Class 1B don't know me as well. And despite NATO coaching for me, they don't believe that my plan will work, or that I'm fit to be a leader. I see. You want advice for being a leader. Well, the first piece of advice I can give you is that it's a leader's job to inspire confidence amongst their workers. This can be through actions or words. You've already gained the confidence of your classmates through your actions you've taken during classes. That's why they believe your plan will work. It's the students who haven't seen you in action that don't know of your skills, and unfortunately, you don't have much time to show them through actions, which means you need to convince them with your words. How do I do that? Izuku questioned. His grandfather gave a hum. Well, there's many different types of leaders. There are people like me who hire people to work under them. I have to inspire them to work well. This is done by promoting good behavior with rewards, such as bonuses for their paycheck or paid vacation time. Then there's the other side of what I do, which is talking to the masses of people. I have to reassure them in times of trouble, such as when a major villain goes on a rampage. In that case, I'm not inspiring people to be loyal to me, I'm doing it to the system, reassuring them of their faith in Hero Society. This I usually do by providing examples, reminding people of the success of heroes in the past. Izuku jotted down a couple notes on what his grandfather said. Those didn't sound like his situation, but it was still something to know in case it was useful. Another type of leader is one who gathers followers. This is usually done via a message that people can get behind. Since you're a villain leader, how about I use a villain you're familiar with as an example? Huh? Izuku said, startled. A villain I'm familiar with? Yes. You are familiar with Stain, correct? I've heard of him, Izuku mumbled into the phone. His grandfather gave a chuckle. I'm aware of the truth of the matter, though good job on not speaking of what happened. Izuku flushed, a slight embarrassment coming over him from being praised. Have you been keeping up with the news about him? Yeah, he was really popular, and then when he was broken out, his popularity skyrocketed. Correct. Do you know why he is popular? I never really thought about it, Izuku answered honestly. That's fine. But the reason so many people like him, despite his criminal behavior, is because of his message. It is a sad truth that some people feel slighted by Hero Society. They feel oppressed. That the heroes of our society aren't doing what they should. His conviction in his words inspires others to follow in his footsteps. While it is unfortunate that some heroes take advantage of our system, it would be stupid to expect people to risk their lives and not get a reward. My point is, Stain used his words to inspire people. These people aren't all mass murderers or otherwise criminals. Some of these people are everyday folks. Some could walk past you in the street and you would never know. Even people who don't like his ideas could find a certain type of admiration in his words. Unbidden, Izuku remembered what Asui said. He is scary, but his drive is impressive, Kero. The fact that despite all the heroes who were trying to stop him, he still stood strong. It's inspiring, even if for the wrong reasons, Kero. Now, villains aren't the only ones who do this. Others do as well. Politicians, for example, they use their words to inspire people and get them to vote for them. Heroes do it as well, though their words are often backed by actions. For example, if I were to say, I am here, your first thought was All Might, right? Yes, Izuku answered. Along with that, was there perhaps a feeling of safety? Izuku blinked, thinking about it before realizing that yes, there was. Yeah. All Might has the simplest message, but his words are backed by years of action, so much that saying those words reminds a person of All Might's actions and invokes the feelings he wants to convey. Everyone uses their words to try and inspire people to their cause and beliefs. Sometimes this usage is subconscious, other times it's not. His grandfather took a pause. My point is, perhaps you should find something to inspire your teammates. If you can work under a common goal, then your team will strengthen by having something to believe in, something to fight for. Izuku frowned. But aren't we fighting for victory in our training exercise? Sure, but it is just a school assignment to some of them. One that won't affect grades. It's a training exercise meant to help you get stronger. But it's not something they believe they need to put full effort into. That's why if you can find a way to convince them of something to fight for, then they'll be more motivated. And with that, increasing your chances of winning. Huh. But what sort of message should I convey? Izuku asked, not knowing what he could say if he did do that. I'm not all-knowing, so I can't just tell you, his grandfather said with a small laugh. But I can give some examples of what people have done, and maybe we can figure something that would work for you. All right, Izuku said excitedly, surprised by how well the call was going. His grandfather was giving him a lot of interesting information, and even if not all of it was usable currently, it was something he might be able to use in the future. Let's take a look at Stain's message again, shall we? He believes that our society is one filled with fakes, that the only true hero is All Might. He claimed he wanted to purge our world of both heroes and petty criminals in order to create a better society. A better society is something everyone wants. They want a place where they can live without fear of being hurt, a place where they can live happily and fulfill their dreams. Stain gave the proposition that it was the heroes who were the cause of society's current pain. He also had a plan of action in order to create his end goal. Let's see. Tell me, how much do you know about the advent of quirks? Well, about 200 years ago, a glowing baby was born, and this heralded the age of quirks. There was a time of upheaval, as those without quirks and those with quirks struggled to live together. Those without were scared of the people with quirks, but then there was a threat, and the beginnings of a hero society was born, leading to modern day, where over 80% of the population is born with quirks. That is correct. Now that threat was a man. His name has been lost to most, but a few people know it and keep the knowledge alive, even though some would wish to hide that knowledge. Unfortunately, I'm not in control of the education, or believe me, more about that era would be known. But, then again, if I wasn't the CEO, I probably wouldn't even be aware of this information. I am also aware that All Might knows some of it, and I don't know if he has perhaps told your class anything. Izuku's eyes widened, and suddenly he was very glad he was on the phone because he didn't think he could have contained his surprise at what he suspected his grandfather was about to say. 200 years ago, when quirks were just starting to become well known, there lived a man with a very powerful quirk, one of the most powerful and would still be to this day if he were still alive. His real name is lost, but he was called All for One, and he had a quirk that allowed him to take quirks away and give them to others. And during the advent of quirks, such an ability was seen as a godsend. People flocked to him, some begging for him to take their quirks away, others begging to be given quirks. But this man saw how the quirkless, those without power, treated those with quirks, how they were treated as freaks, monsters, they were shunned by society. So he created his own message. He wanted those with quirks to be treated equally. He wanted them to be able to use their gift without persecution. He wanted those with mutation quirks to be able to walk down the street without having things thrown at them. So he used his quirk to gain a following. He promised those who wanted quirks a power if they would follow him and help him. For those who wanted to get rid of it, he took it away in return for them making sure they would stop any quirkism they saw. Soon he had amassed thousands of followers, and he himself had a stockpile of quirks, but somehow amongst that chaos, the government created the Hero Program. They created this program due to the vigilantes, people with and without quirks that were fighting crimes. Mostly they fought those with quirks, the people the police couldn't handle, but sometimes they also fought those without quirks. They created their hero program and handpicked certain vigilantes to join it, while also making vigilantes a crime. The first task for the new heroes was to arrest the vigilantes who disobeyed this new law. And the heroes obeyed, even against former friends. But after the government cleaned up the vigilantes, they turned their attention to the protesting civilians that followed under All for One's banner. These people were arrested. Some were protesting peacefully, others were rioting. It mattered not to the government. Anyone causing unrest was dealt with. At some point, All for One disappeared. I'm unsure of what happened, though it is believed that he was killed during his time by one of the heroes. His grandfather fell silent, and Izuku had a lot to think about, and he didn't have anything to say for a solid minute. Didn't know most of that, Izuku finally said. His grandfather chuckled. Like I said, the people in charge of education have decided that this information should be lost, but the Hero Commission has kept records of their beginnings. Now, given that little history lesson, All for One had a message that people believed in. His message being about equality for those with quirks, for them to be able to use their powers without restraint. Similar to Stain's message, All for One's message promised a better society. Over the course of history, many people promised a better society in their message. They would use different words, phrase it in different ways, but almost all messages boil down to that simple promise. A better society, a place for people to feel welcomed. Now let's return to the matter at hand, your training exercise. Given what we've discussed so far, what are your thoughts? Izuku frowned, a lot of information whirling through his head, and after a few minutes of his grandfather waiting patiently, he spoke up. That if I want to use my words to convince the others to give it their all, I have to have a message that they can get behind. Good. Go on, his grandfather encouraged. My message, it in some way would have to imply that following me or my lead would lead to a better society. Exactly. Now take a minute and think about the people that you're working with. Is there any sort of common thread between you all? Preferably, it'd be something you're all passionate about. Izuku glanced at his notebook, which now had a few pages of notes he had gathered during his conversation with his grandfather, and flipped it back to his notes on his teammates. He went over everything he knew about their personalities and their quirks. Most of them had good quirks, useful quirks, but even people with useful quirks could be bullied if others thought of the quirks as weak or villainous. Everyone's value was determined by their quirks these days. As he looked over, he could see how they may have been bullied, and some that he knew for a fact were bullied over something they couldn't control. If there was one thing he wanted to change in society, it would be the discrimination based on quirks or lack thereof. And he was fairly sure that it was a message the rest of his group could get behind. I think I have something. His grandfather gave a hum. You think? Yeah. You don't sound very convincing, his grandfather commented lightly. Izuku sighed, shoulder slumping. I'm just not leader material. None of that now. I believe in you. You can do it, Izuku. Think about your message, your belief. If you feel strongly about this, then say it. Izuku froze, the words his grandfather said in his mind. He believed in Izuku. Unprompted faces flashed in his mind, from All Might to Aizawa to Yamada to his classmates, his friends. All of them constantly believed him, gave him confidence, and let him be himself. They believed in him. Izuku closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and thought about his message, thinking about what his grandfather told him. And he spoke. A moment later, and there was an excited laughter from the other end of the phone. That's it, Izuku. Good job. That was amazing. His excited voice trailed off, and after a moment he asked, Well, was my advice helpful? Izuku beamed, though the older man couldn't see it. Yes, it was. Thank you. No problem, and remember, you can call any time. I will. The two ended the call, and Izuku got to work in his notebook, jotting down new ideas and plans. All right, listeners, this concludes Chapter 76 of Little Acts of Kindness. Chapter 77 will be up next. Let me know your all thoughts and reactions to this one. I thought it was a really cute chapter, but also really powerful in some of the messages conveyed in there, and the way that Izuku's grandfather kind of talks about past villains, All for One, Stain. I thought that was really cool to see as well, but it was also a really cool bonding between the two of them. So let me know your overall thoughts and reactions, and as always, thank you so much for listening.